If your business keeps getting denied for business funding, or if you're trying to avoid getting denied for business capital, it's not going to be the bank's fault, and it's definitely not going to be the economy's fault. It all boils down to one thing. And that one thing is how your company is structured and the cadence and the frequency of how you apply for business capital. In this video, I want to break down what I do day in, day out with our clients, which is helping them set up funding systems inside of their businesses that allows them to get access to business capital so they no longer have to depend on things like hard money loans, personal credit cards, or digging in or bleeding through their own personal cash reserves. Instead, they're able to use this thing called business funding that allows them to get capital through the business that they can then re-inject into projects, deals, contracts, sales, payroll, you name it. Let's get right into it. First thing that you have to understand, and I wish someone would have explained this to me earlier, is that banks don't fund businesses. Banks fund risk profiles. Irv, what do you mean by that? Banks don't care about your vision. They don't care about how enthusiastic you are about your business. Heck, they don't even care how long you've been in business, especially if you don't have this in place. And what I'm talking about is your risk, your consistency, and the legitimacy of how your business is framed. In essence, the structure tells the bank everything they need to know about whether your business is funding ready or if it's a liability on their books. Now, there's 5 key components that I want to give you that you can run through with your own business that's going to allow you to set yourself up properly. So whether you're just getting access to that first $50,000 line, or if you're scaling past $500,000 in business capital, you can essentially reapply this into your business so that it allows you to scale beyond where you're currently at right now. The first place that we always look at is going to be the entity structure. Whether you have an LLC, whether you have an S Corp, this is one of the main places where I see a lot of people mess it up. Because the way that your LLC looks and the way that it's formed on day one may end up looking completely different from how it looks on year 5 or on year 10. Because I've seen this far too often. When I'm taking on a client, I'll take a look at their LLC and I'll say, hey, when was the last time you actually took a look at the structure of your business? And they'll say, wait, last time I looked at it was when I paid so-and-so to set it up, or last time I looked at it is when I set it up a couple of years ago. But here's what ends up happening. The business has its life cycle. And so more often than not, what you typically got into business with has either evolved or you've just completely shifted industries as a whole. But the problem is that most people don't know, or actually don't think to go back to when they first ended up structuring that business and then making the adjustments where it's needed. Which brings us to our second key component. The industry classification is going to make or break the validity of the business, not just so that you get approved for business capital, but I've also seen people get denied for something as simple as a business trade line or a business checking account or a business savings. And it typically stems back to how the business is perceived in the eyes of the bank. Irv, what does that mean? That means that if your business is categorized in a high risk or restricted industry, because there's 4 buckets, then the bank is going to say, we can't do business and we can't partner with you, whether that's opening up your checking accounts or, again, extending you out some type of credit line. And so there's 4 types of risk profiles that a bank typically has, and you're going to land in one of these 4 buckets. If you're finding value in this video and you're looking to install a business funding setup directly into your business, we'd love to connect with you, see where you're at, and see how we can help you scale through capital. Go ahead and book a call with us down below. It's totally free. We'll see where you're at, where you're looking to go, and how we can help you get there. See you on the inside. The first one is going to be a restricted industry. We never want to land inside of a restricted industry because this means that as soon as you put your application in with the bank or with the credit union, they're going to say, red flag, denial. Nope, we're not touching you. The second type of risk profile is going to be a high risk type of profile, a high risk type of business. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that the business is taboo, and it doesn't necessarily mean that the business is doing anything shady. But what it is that the type of industry that that business or that company is involved in could either be in a weak cycle right now. And so that could mean that a lot of businesses in that industry are defaulting, or it's a highly speculative business. So an example of this would be like a crypto or real estate development or a real estate custom home build. Again, those could be all legitimate businesses. But again, the nature of how cash flow moves inside of those businesses and the likelihood of a business defaulting could end up making that business look a bit riskier compared to the final two profiles that banks would typically bucket you in. The third type of profile would be a low risk industry. Now, this is where we want to live. And there's actually a better one than this, but for the most part, this is where we want to place ourselves whenever we're structuring our businesses. This means two things. Number one is that we are in a healthy industry for what the bank wants to do or how the bank wants to partner with us, the business owner, which means this is when you start having approvals start coming your way. This is when you start graduating from 50K lines to 100K lines to 200K worth of business capital. And then the second thing is that the bank is going to see the business like they're in it for the long run. It has longevity attached to it because the default inside of those businesses is also low compared to a high risk industry or a restricted industry. But there's a fourth type of bucket that you want to know about, and that's going to be the preferred industry. Now, this is the holy grail because this means that we have the right bank, we have the right industry, and then we have the right setup for our business, which means that the floodgates, essentially, when this is done right, open up, which then allows you to ultimately reduce any potential denials that you'll get. Gosh, if you're in a preferred industry, you'll most likely won't get any denials. But then the second thing is that the amounts that you get approved for are typically 3 to 10 times the amount that you would typically get if you were in a low risk industry or even in a high risk industry, because you're not battling any currents. You essentially have that tailwind or like that wind effect that's pushing your back. So now you're essentially riding off of momentum because the bank says, yes, this is the type of industry we want to partner with and do business with. So how much capital do you need to scale? The next thing that you'd want to pay attention to is going to be the business address. And this is pivotal because far too often you'll see someone just say, slap on a virtual office address on their LLC or slap on a virtual office address on top of your corporation. And that couldn't be further from the truth. Here's why. Sometimes the type of virtual addresses that are being sold, and I wouldn't even say sometimes, in most instances, especially when they're cheaper. So this is where you want to like put a little bit of more money into your business, is that the virtual office address that's being sold, and sometimes registered agents do this as well, unfortunately, it's a low type of grade, or I should say low grade type of address. And here's what that means. That means that if you were to do a reverse search on that address, and this is one thing that I always tell clients, hey, make sure that when we're doing this, we're auditing the address properly. We help them do this, is we want to make sure that it's not screened as a private mailbox. And it's not, well, so when you look at it, it'll be a PMB on your address, and it's not screened as a PO box. And so I was actually talking to someone not too long ago, and they said that the type of address that they had was essentially outside of a Staples or like a shipping package center. And I said, look, you want to remove that address as soon as possible. They asked me why. I said, let's look at it from this perspective. If you were looking to do business with someone and you did a quick Google search on where they were located, let's say that you wanted to go to a restaurant and you Googled the restaurant and you looked up this restaurant just to see where it was at. And then all of a sudden you see like it's in this sketchy warehouse looking facility, and like you can't really see any Google reviews on it. And then all of a sudden, like you're on Google Maps and half of it is like behind the bushes and it's blurred out, or it's in some sketchy area of town. You see where I'm going with this, right? And so it's the same thing that happens whenever we get one of these cheap addresses. And again, I don't blame you. Like most people think, especially if you're on YouTube, oh, just get a virtual office address. That tends to work for most people. So let me just slap one on. But that's not the case, especially with a lot of junk that's being sold. And so this is where you want to do some DD, some due diligence, and really take your time with this piece. You want to take a look at, is the screen as a private mailbox? Okay, that checks off. It's not. Okay, fantastic. It's a suite number. Great. Take it a step further. Let me be logical about this. Let me look at the address and let me see how it looks like on Google Maps. Okay, it looks like a legit building. Okay, got it. Okay, there's a parking garage. Okay, cool. There's a ton of parking space. Okay. It looks like a legitimate building. Doesn't look sketchy. It doesn't look like it's like on some haunted house looking type of building. That's what we want. And the reason why I say this is because you would think that this is something that just would fly under the radar, or that most people would say, yeah, I know this, or that there's no way that banks look at that. banks are always looking for low-hanging fruit before they actually connect with the business owner or before they actually get in talks with funding a business. And so one of the main metrics that to look at is the address, because it's low-hanging fruit, because so many people screwed up, but not you, because you're watching this video now. Next up, when it comes to structuring, is the funding sequence. Now, I know that we're mainly talking about the structuring of the business, but the way that we actually sequence our funding has very much to do with the overall structure here. If we are going to fund a business, we don't just want to go to a bank that we see all over the internet, that you see online. Because if you go to a bank in the wrong order, you end up essentially wasting a hard inquiry, or you end up wasting an application, because a lot of this stuff gets documented internally. And some people say, well, I could just go back in and remove the hard inquiry. You could remove the hard inquiry, but you still get that documented inside that your business was timestamped. And so this piece right here is of the essence. And so this is why whenever we are structuring, not just a business, we structure our funding around three things. Number one is we structure around the total exposure that that bank is willing to lend to you, meaning how much capital they're willing to extend to you based on how old your business is and how you've been established. That's one thing. Second thing that we look at is the type of product selection that we have inside of that financial institution. And so this could be business lines of credit. This could be SBA products. This could be 0% business capital. This could be term loans. This could be equipment financing. Again, every bank and every type of financial institution that you go into, it's going to have their own strengths for the type of capital that they distribute based on their history of businesses that they've worked with in the past, like their portfolio of businesses. This is why if you have an information technology business and you're going into said bank and they're really just known for equipment financing, may not be the type of bank that you'd want to go to. You'd want to pick something else at that point. And then the third piece when it comes to the structuring of that funding sequence is going to be the timing. And so how we apply for capital in any given moment is going to be crucial, because if we move too quickly, you're going to be seen like you're fishing for capital. But if we move too slowly and we stall it out, the banks are going to say, well, I guess they don't need as much capital as they're saying that they do, because they're kind of like carrying this thing out. And so a typical sequence that I'll see with clients when we're setting them up for funding is we'll look at anywhere between 30 to 60 days when we're prepping them. Now, could it happen a lot faster than that? Absolutely, especially if it's not your first time around the block. But if you're getting set up, we obviously want to take some time around the setup of the business before we actually move into the sequencing of the capital. And so the sequencing of the capital typically moves quick. It moves within 7 to 14 days once you have your funding plan in place. And so that means that if I'm going to be hitting, as an example, Bank A, Bank B, and Bank C, I know that I'm probably going to get 2 products with Bank A, 1 product with Bank B, and then 2 products with Bank C. That could be a combination of a bunch of 0% business credit lines, or a combination of maybe 2 business credit lines at one bank, 1 business line of credit that I can draw from to get myself in and out of deals or cover payroll, and then 1 maybe bigger chunk, because sometimes we have like a chunk method where we'll have like a bigger either term product or maybe an SBA type of product that we can like lay on top of everything else, as an example, right? And this varies, again, depending on the type of business that you're in and how long you've been in business. And last but not least is the banking behavior signals. Now, this is crucial, because if you did everything else that we just talked about in this training and in this video, but you miss this piece right here, it can cost you not just a business credit approval, but it can cost you a significant lump sum. And so here's what I mean by that. Banks don't just see balances, they're going to look at your patterns. And so you want to pay attention to not just how much money you're putting into an account or how much money is coming in through that account if you're already running transactions through it, but then you also want to start taking a look at a snapshot of a rhythm of the account. If you've been in business for some time, then you'll understand that this is known as your cash flow cycle. And so there's either certain days in the week, certain days in the month, or certain days in a quarter where you'll have more money flowing in through the account than other periods. And so you want to utilize that as a signal that now would be a good time for me to either ask for a credit limit increase on the business side or start to move my way into additional business products. And so sometimes I'll tell a client to hold, not because I don't think that they'll get approved for business capital going through that bank, but because I know, especially if it's like an e-commerce brand, I'm working with the client right now. He's coming off of high time. He has a ton of cash sitting in his account because he just came off of high time at the end of Q4, Q1. It's prime season for them. And so I'll say, okay, now is going to be the right time that we can ask for business capital because you have all of this cash that was cycled in through your account versus maybe waiting for slow season and saying, okay, now the bank is going to see me like I'm in a dire need, like I need the capital. And so it's essentially what we're creating. It's like a delicate illusion. And so we want to show the bank that, yes, we want to partner with you. Here's how my business is structured. Extend out capital for these upcoming projects or for this upcoming maybe material that I need for an expansion that I'm doing. But then we also don't want it to look like we need them. Because there's a saying, when you need the capital, you can't get it. And so you typically get it when you don't need it. It's kind of like dating world, right? It's like when you start to look too desperate, no one wants to talk to you at the bar. Like no one wants to come around, which is why we want to monitor our transfer behavior. How many transfers, like note that down. How many transfers am I making in and out of the accounts? The source of the funds. Is this going to be funded right through the business? So from one business checking to another, or is it a personal contribution? And then the account stability, meaning you never let your account go below X threshold. And so if for that account, it's let's say $2,000 for a basic business checking, you never want it to dip to $1,500. It kills your internal bank rating. You never want it to go into overdraft. You never want it to go into insufficient funds. You always want to keep it at baseline. In my recommendation, well above it. So if you found value in this video, that's how we would structure the business as well as the sequencing of how we would go out and apply for capital. Then I think you'll like this video right here. Check it out.